Sorry. Okay. So that is a better angle. There we go. Oh, good. Okay. Okay. Now I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try one more thing. Okay. So that should be interesting. So, hello, TikTok. I'm doing a live on TikTok as well as doing a live here on Twitch. Twitch is, of course, going to be able to see more. Uh, but we're sitting, we're chatting, we're doing the thing. Let's see. Okay, that's good. And let's go with that for now. let's not let's not all over the place too much. So I will show you the viewer at home what I am working on. And what I am working on is a watercolor painting. If you're on my Twitch channel, Dame Red Bento, you can actually see me working on it. For TikTok, I will definitely flip this around every now and again so people can look at it. So I got a little bit more layering in. And at first I thought, oh my god, my noodles are going to be too dark and they're going to blend in with her skin, which is this beautiful walnut ink that I've been using. Fortunately, because I'm a dingy and I kind of forgot, fortunately, as the paint dries with watercolors, it actually gets a bit lighter. And so it lightened up beautifully. And now I can go back in, I can put shadow in between the noodles and give it a little bit more pop, a little bit more depth of field by adding a little bit more color, a little bit more shadow, give it a little bit more 3D. Now, I'm pretty much self-taught when it comes to art. I belong to a wonderful art group called the Sketchy Bugs, and they really help me um, like figure out how to improve my technique, what I'm doing right, what I'm doing wrong. They give really good soft critique so that I'm learning something. And if I've done something like really wrong, because I was having trouble with like curvatures and certain things, they go, oh, just it's you have to look at your disappearing point and then where you're going to see it again. So like sometimes they'll sometimes some of the members will give me like a physical example because I learn better through seeing a physical example sometimes. And yeah, I have come so far. Like I still have one of my first watercolors. Oh my god, this thing's horrible. Oh, it's so bad. It's so bad. But at the same point, even though it's not great by any stretch of the imagination, having this reminds me I used to be not great because I didn't have the training. I didn't have the classes, and I didn't have the practice to make me great. And in roughly that was probably about, oh god, about 2 years ago, and I almost I almost gave up. I almost gave up. I really almost gave up. But that I think that was about 2 or 3 years ago, and then I joined the Sketchy Bucks, I believe, a year ago, a little over a year ago actually, and I have made such market improvements. So I would definitely say if you're going to join a if you're going to join any sort of art group, find an art group that is supportive and that knows how to give critique, not criticism, not put you down, but give critique. I still have to figure out what I'm going to put kind of here in the backgrounds because I don't want it to be too cluttered, but I think I want to put like shoreline right about here. So near the midpoint of the chair, so you can see that there's some distance away from the beach that she's at, and maybe put the part of the sign or something right there in this upper side corner, just to give you perspective of like where she is and where she is sitting. So I'm using a water pen today, and a water pen is this really cool tool that I really love. And what happens is with a water pen, you can see that there's a reservoir there. You can fill it with water, and then you have your brush, and that way your brush is constantly wet. And you can flood areas, you can do a wet on wet kind of technique. It gives you softer colors, and it gives you more control over the water you have on your brush while making it so you don't have to constantly re-dip your brush, which can, dirty water and blah, 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 blah. And it slows you down. So I already pre-mixed a couple of tones. I would flip my palette up, but it has some water on it, so yeah. But this is the palette that I'm using by a company called Prang. Oh, shoot. Well, beautifully done. Ah, sometimes these things happen. I was able to mop most of it up. I can correct it a little bit later on. But yeah. Why did that come off so... Oh, because I forgot to flood and blot. Woo! Coffee is not kicked in yet. I will definitely say that. Okay. Take two. But yeah, I've used a couple of different, I usually use portables, but I've used a couple of different companies for watercolors, and I've used Castle-Farber, I have used, oh god, McCormick, and now I'm trying out Prang. Now, Prang is not a watercolor company that has a portable, but it was inexpensive. It was at Blix. It had purple, which I've been looking for forever. And I have actually really enjoyed working with this, and I didn't think that I would enjoy working with this quite so much. The color seems to be more malleable, and I like working with it because the colors are rather true and they don't fade down too much when I'm working with them, which is nice. I like blot techniques. And a blot technique, at least what I'm doing, is I'll lay down color, and then if I find it too heavy or not really textured, I gently put paper towel or a good absorbent napkin across it. And since napkins and paper towels have like texture to them, they have like a waffling, it soaks up the water a little bit unevenly unless I firmly press on it. And when it does that, I can get a bit more texture into what I'm doing. So I find it interesting, and I find it rather fun. And I'm just kind of teaching myself these techniques. I need to watch more tutorials. I just happen to be a very anxious, nervous disposition at times. I do have some anxiety issues, and so it's the weirdest thing, I know, but sometimes I have trouble watching tutorials because, like, I don't want people to think, oh, yeah, you copied this technique. I didn't. I mean, I'm practicing a technique. I'm not copying a technique. But sometimes artists will do a direct, um, like, they'll do the exact same picture as the person doing the tutorial. And the reason you do the exact same picture is so that you're kind of gauging, okay, am I doing this correctly? And you're trying to get your stuff to look a lot like what is happening in front of you. Because that solidifies in your brain, okay, this technique actually works, or maybe I'm missing information. So I'm doing a bit of I did a blue and black mix because nighttime is not pure black. There are very, very, very few pure black, true black tones in nature or in the world that that you inhabit. So a lot of times when you see black, that's exactly what you put down because that's what your brain is going, oh yeah, black. And then you're like, why am I missing depth? Black actually reflects a ton of light. You just don't always necessarily notice it. So putting in negative space or putting in light tones, white tones, grays will give your piece even more color. If you're going into something that is like, say, cavernous or has very, very, very little light touching it, you're going to use a much darker tone or a much more saturated tone of black because there is less light actually hitting things. But yeah, I love gray tones because they are truer to what you're actually seeing. Okay, so flood. lot better. So how is everybody doing this morning? Okay. So, I forgot what color eyes. Shoot. I always kind of forget what color eyes bats have offhandedly. First, then again, the bat I'm doing is. Sorry. In joke, in joke, in joke. It's in my own head. Okay, so right down there, see, that's a backpack. And the backpack it's black, but you do it in gray tones. The only, like, black is going to be in that, when you can see just kind of inside the pouch because it's getting very little light going into it. But I can still represent black with gray tones. And once this dries, and it'll probably lighten up a bit, I'll put on another coat with a bit more paint. Okay, oh, thank goodness. I think my stream is still going. I'm so sorry about that, guys. I didn't realize I had set something on top of the sleep / power button. I feel like a total dork. But yes. we will keep this going. Okay, so this is the piece we are working on. I'm slowly filling in color, and I also happen to have a live stream on TikTok going. So don't mind me if I'm speaking to random people. By all means, feel free to ask questions. I am definitely in a chatty mood. So so now that I have a pretty good setup going, I'm going to start painting the things that are in the bowl because she's eating udon. I actually have a really nice kind of soft reddish going, which again, I want to show it. I want to show the color, but I don't want to saturate the piece that I'm working on because, well, char siu pork is lovely and wonderful. Or meat is lovely and wonderful, but a lot of meat has at least a little bit of fat in it. So again, I want slightly reflective, pillowy goodness. I put in the red, and then I'll go back in a little bit later with a bit more of a brown to get a little bit closer to where I want it to be. But red is the undertone. And I'm finding that it is easier to put in the undertone and then layer over the color you're probably going to see a lot more of. So how's everybody doing this morning? As you can see, I'm in a wonderfully chatty mood and haven't actually had that much coffee. But I am having a lot of fun using my water pen. Concentrated the color a lot more because green onion. Yeah, you don't go all the way down on green onion. A little wakame seaweed over here in the corner. Okay. Sorry, I'm blotting the pen on my pant leg. Just so much quicker and easier. Oh, like egg yolk. So egg yolk, soft yellow, and again not fully filled in. And then oh, that's right. So I gave the green just a slight chance to soak in before I go back to redistribute the color. A little bit of streakiness. Instead of having a uniform color. A little bit of wobble, I call it. Don't ask, I'm weird. But like a little bit of wobble when it comes to what you see registers better than just straight flat color, at least for this. Now, if I was doing super flat, which super flat is where you fill in just straight color. It's something that you do quite often just digitally. And Murakami, that's his name. I was like, I know his name, and it left my brain. Murakami was the creator of Super Flat. And Super Flat is so cute and so wonderful. And if you are over 18, look up Murakami. Although if you do Murakami Super Flat, you might just come across slightly more regular stuff. A lot of his stuff is it's really weird, kind of freaky, but I really, really love it. Oh, and he did a beautiful installment at the Versailles in France. Oh my God. It is the oddest juxtaposition of bright colors and fever dreams juxtaposed against the exceedingly refined and gilded style of what 17th 18th century like art. We're talking gilded archways, fresco paintings, the whole nine. Super high end stuff because, it was made for a very, very rich person. Well, this very, very rich person, you know, when Murakami came in, I find it hilarious that they're like, hey, Murakami, can you come and do an art installment? And then they wanted to give him attitude for the art that he brought. And he's like, I'm sorry, you invited me. Do you not know who I am? If you don't know who I am, that is not my fault. Figure it out. I love Murakami because he not only bucks trend, he uh he doesn't care for super commercialized stuff. He likes doing whatever he does. And he often makes fun of capitalism and super commercialized consumerism. And so his art a lot of the times is a snub at commercialization, but at the same time he knowingly is putting it out there to be consumed. And he's showing kind of like the vicious cycle of consumerism, capitalism, making art just to be consumed, consuming art just to consume. And it's this funny go around. And like a lot of the companies he works with don't seem to understand the fact that he is making fun of them. Um, Louis Vuitton is a great example of this. They said, hey, come on over, make this thing. We'll set up an entire store for your stuff to be shown in. And he says, okay, sure. And he showed up and just made the most gaudy, like gaudy shit. And I believe at the time he was also teamed up with Sanrio. So he did Louis Vuitton Sanrio purses. And I'll have to say it was one of the few times I thought about buying a Louis Vuitton because Murakami made it interesting. Murakami put a lot of like heart, soul, like tongue-in-cheek humor into it, which is I love tongue-in-cheek humor when it comes to art. So, yeah. Sorry, I'm chatty. Oh, that's right. Mushroom. I'm adding just a touch of color because pure white is also something that does not tend to occur often. It's shades of things. What color should I do the bowl? I guess I could do the bowl in red actually. Now that I'm thinking about it, because red is a color of stimulation. Um, if a diner wants you to eat less, they put blues around you. And if a diner or an eatery wants you to eat more, they put reds around you. Red is that color that's a little bit more exciting. It's upbeat, so it really gets to you. Hey, it's one of my faves, Graham and Norma. This is on Twitch. So I am layering in a bit of red, but also leaving a bit of reflective space. And I love this water pen because it makes my job so much easier. How you doing today, dear? I am rambling on and on as I do. Yeah, I'm using a water brush today for a lot of my painting, a lot of my technique. Do do do. And so you can see how soft the water brush leaves what I'm doing. All right, let me show you because I'm turning it around so that the people in live stream for TikTok can also see. So I'm going to make the bowl red, but it's not going to be a flat red. It's got to be graded in there. And if anybody has questions or has a topic they'd like to hear me talk about, because I chat constantly, go ahead, feel free, and I will dive in. Okay. Good. Yes. Never be afraid to send an email to a company asking when they're going to have certain things back in, or if they're going to get certain things back in. And yeah, like honestly, the worst they could say is, yeah, we're not going to get it back in. It was a short time run or whatever. But yeah, at least you get an answer. The answer is a good thing. So a little bit more color concentration towards the sides because it's curving away. You don't necessarily see it. If you don't see it, sometimes it gets a little bit darker because it's receiving less light. The areas that you're going to usually perceive the most amount of light are areas like kind of right in front of you. Oh, somebody was asking, because I'm always chatting, somebody was asking why representation matters. And it wasn't the confrontational, why does representation matter? No, it was simply like, hey, why does representation matter so much? And like this has been the hot topic that's been going around for quite some time. And it's hard to put into words quite often why it matters so much in a way that pleases the masses, as it were. And a great example of why representation matters so much is Walter Mercado. And I know a lot of people are probably going, who the heck is Walter Mercado? Well, Walter Mercado was an astrologer, and they had their own TV show for years, and they were a cultural staple for years. And most Americans would not know who he was. But on RuPaul's Drag Race, the All Stars fifth season, when they did Snatch Game, or not Snatch Game, it was a Love Connection game, sorry. But basically, it was like Snatch Game, where you had the drag queens impersonating a celebrity. And, you had they get dressed up to look like them. They show off with their mannerisms and make jokes and all that kind of stuff. Well, Alexis Mateo, who is Puerto Rican, decided to do Walter Mercado, who is Puerto Rican. And they made the most hilarious, like a really, really, really good Love Connection / Snatch Game character. And it really kind of put that name in your head and on the map. Well, Netflix just came out with a documentary about Walter Mercado. And I'd seen it, like the panel for it, just in passing. And I'm like, I don't know if that's really going to be me. I'm not in the mood for like a Liberace kind of thing. And because Alexis Mateo had shown Walter Mercado could be fun and it was a very interesting character, and there was a lot of cultural significance, and it's like, no, seriously, show up. You have to see this person. They're really cool. Well, me and my friend went, okay, you know what? This is something outside of our purview, but let's go ahead and watch it. And we watched it and we enjoyed the hell out of it. And it showed a different perspective. It showed a different culture. It showed a different community. But had that culture, had that community never been represented in front of us, especially by a person who not only grew up in that culture but loved it, if we had never seen that love and that representation, we might not have ever sat through that documentary and learned something. And instead, because we saw that representation clearly in front of us by a person who belonged to the culture and gave it the right nuance and gave it the right treatment, well, we ended up watching it. We ended up learning something. And that's why the representation mattered. Representation helps get you interested in other cultures, in other things, and it gives you a perspective as to why a culture, even if they live within your borders, why a culture may do a thing, and why it is interesting and why it is significant. When you don't have a culture represented, you're making guesses, usually off of very old, very biased information. And that very old, very biased information doesn't always paint it in a loving light or in a way that, um, kind of gives the nuance. That nuance makes a huge amount of difference. That nuance, that love, gives a very, very different perspective and makes it easier to understand why people do certain things that they do, why certain cultures do things that they do, and how the world is navigated. So you end up actually learning a lot more and having a lot more fun. Okay. So I was going over the umbrella that you see above, and I'll probably put in another layer of red, but I had to shift some things around. But also, I'm starting to work on the bowl, and I want to give it a bit more depth. But you can't go ham when you're working with watercolors because water is a very fluid thing, so it moves back and forth, and it's going to move your pigments back and forth. And if you just go in and layer it quick, you're going to end up with muddied colors because they've been so thoroughly blended, and it doesn't paint as pleasing a picture. And I'm still refining my different techniques, but I like a little bit of definition. I still have a very kind of cartoon, anime, slightly Western style. And I want to, yes, I want to keep my anime style. Love it. but I also would really like to be able to work on and kind of level up my skills as far as comic book style. I love Western comic book styles. I grew up on Western comic books, so I want to be able to refine that style as well. Nothing is nothing is overnight. Everything is a bit of work. Hello, 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 hello. So I'm on Mop Crush. So there's going to be a bunch of different people talking and whatnot. So if you're like, what is she talking about? Greeting people across the boards. Okay. Layering a little bit of gray. A very, 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 very light amount of gray at that. This little bit of gray is just going to create a touch of shadow. And even if it feels like it's too late for you to see once it's dry, it actually does make a difference. Because your brain actually perceives color at a much more refined and nuanced rate than you would think. You can tell something, you can tell colors apart at like, what is it, 0.0333, which is basically, if it's even 1/333rd of a shade difference, your eye can perceive it. Maybe not always a ton, and you may not always be able to like, oh yeah, that's off. This one's darker, that one's lighter. But your eye will tell you something's going on there, and yeah. So even if you put in a color and you don't think it's going to like show up, your brain is going to perceive it, and it's going to add information. And honestly, this is something in art that they did not teach me. When I went to fashion college, they taught me a lot of things. They really did. I ain't mad. But for the art classes I took, some of them had this attitude of, well, if you don't already know all these art principles, I don't know what to tell you. And like, these are beginner classes. Treat me like I'm absolutely a beginner. Give me explanations. I want to know why I'm doing something. If I'm just slapping paint across a board, you're going to get a result, but it's not necessarily a refined result. Explain to me why it's good to leave a bit of negative space. Explain to me why it is good to have deeper tones or a mixture of colors. Because I am a layperson, so I think in very simplified terms. As I learn more, I understand. Oh, okay. So here, I'll give you a great example. So as I'm painting, okay. So sorry. So you can see the bowl. It's red. Well, the tabletop is probably going to be like shiny or slightly reflective because it's going to be polished wood. The red is going to reflect onto that shiny surface, and that polished wood surface is going to reflect onto the bowl. So I'm going to need to add a little bit of the brown tones that I'm planning to put on here, and I'm going to need to put a little extra red tone next to the bowl. The same thing where you can see the umbrella overhead. The umbrella is going to cast shade, so of course I'm going to lay down a little bit of gray. but also it's a red umbrella with light coming through it. So I'm going to need to take and up the amount of red that I mix with my gray because it's going to affect the skin tone across which it hits. So this side will be getting more regular sunlight, but the far side is going to get a little bit of a red tone treatment. So yeah, it's, again, this is all stuff I'm having to teach myself or find out or be taught. And I'm relying sometimes, a lot of the times actually, on my Sketchy Bug group, because I can go to them and go, yeah, there's something, I need a little bit more. What am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? And they'll go, okay, well, we love, this, and this. I think what you're missing, what you might be looking for, is this, and this. I'm like, oh, it is. And they're like, and here's how you get there. So I very much appreciate what they do. Sorry, I've got to flood the pan. So I'm going to use my blue-blacked tones. A kind of streak in. Hair is, you want to drive yourself nuts? Do hair. Hair is difficult, but in like the best ways possible. And the reason it's difficult is because there's so many different colors. There's so many different tones, highlights, lowlights, midtones, and learning where to put those tones takes a lot of practice and a lot of patience and usually a very small brush. Yes, there are some super flat techniques where you just, you layer in a color, you're good to go. I like to have a little bit more depth. Well, yeah, that takes time. And yeah, Leica has more black hair, or she wears more black hair. So yeah, adding black. Which, if you don't know Leica, Leica's my werewolf. She's my werewolf maid. And I love her to bits and pieces. Ugh, I've got Hamilton just running through my head like it owns it. Ugh. I am, pardon, wow, that was a frog. So I am avoiding putting too much color heavily at the top, because that's the place where you're getting the most light being bounced back. So of course it's going to show up a bit more white. But I also don't want to obliterate the gray tones that I have just below. I'm still reserving the darkest tones for the edges and for just behind the curl. So the curl on the inside, sorry, I forget to protect something. The curl on the inside needs an even darker coat because it's getting even less light than the hair that you're seeing on the outside. Yeah, I have to go slow and steady for the most part. And then, like, the last stage, we'll be putting in the darkest amount of color for the curl into just the spots that are the undertone. But again, I can't put or I mean, I could, but it wouldn't look nearly as good. I can't put straight black in there. It has to be tonally dark, but it can't be strictly opaque or blotted out super hard color, because then I would lose some of the depth and some of the wonderful pop that I am working on to make things look a bit more rounded, not necessarily real, but give it depth. And of course, I'm going to make things a little bit lighter as I come towards the forehead. Because, again, the forehead, you can see, like right there and right here. This side of my face is actually receiving more light. This part of my forehead, of course, comes forward because of the round, because of the slope. So it gets more light here, slightly less light here because I have a heavier brow, less light here because I have kind of hooded, and actually a little bit less light just along my hairline, because that hairline, it does block some amount of light. Yeah, like learning all these things by hand, as it were, has been really interesting. But it makes the art interesting. And I don't think I've settled on necessarily a final form, but I think watercolor is definitely going to be my medium of choice. Because you really have to think about it, and it's interesting to see like where I have come from and where I'm going to. I'm going to grab my portfolio real quick and see if I can find one of my earliest watercolors. And oh man, it makes me cringe now, but I also am kinder to myself because it's like, oh, okay. You have to come from somewhere. I did come from somewhere. I have made great inroads and I have done so much to be better. Okay, so let me show you this. So you're starting to see a little bit more depth with the hair, a little bit extra, a little bit more pop, a little bit more zhuzh. And right now I can see that the paper is starting to bow, meaning it's absorbed a lot of water, so it's rising up, which is okay. I just need to let this dry for a bit um, so that I'm not saturating and muddying and whatnot. Ah, thank you. Oh, sorry. Yeah. So this is an 18 by 24, roughly. So yeah, definitely one of my larger pieces. But I actually really like working on larger pieces. And if people are interested in commissioning me, I always give them the higher number, just so they know what to expect. But like something as small as a trading cards are like $15 because I can sketch it out and do a quick paint job on them pretty quick. Actually, I've got a few cards here, and I need to let that dry for a bit. But yeah, like trading cards don't take too long. And there we go. I'm putting them up on my Square site. Oh, this is one of my favorites. So I did this postcard kind of a while ago, and it's Vlad and Laika. These two are like my favorite characters that I created. I love it. Sorry. Like I have a whole background, a whole story going on in my head. I'm going to actually write it down and make it into a story. But yeah, like don't ever be afraid to mess up or flub a technique. So this is gold leafing. I found it interesting, and I'll probably do it again. But, you know, not necessarily my most favorite technique. Or at least for that, not my most favorite technique. I'm losing some depth of color, so I need to refine how and when I use it. But like this, I literally did it as a very quick sketch and did a really quick color. Because for me, it was like, okay, let's do something that's slightly more Western comic book. And yeah, it still comes out to having kind of an anime tilt to it because that's where I've trained myself. But yeah, like I actually had a lot of fun, and this took me less than an hour to do. So, you know, sit down, sketch it out, ink it, and watercolor takes me 45 minutes to an hour usually, mostly because I have to wait for paint to dry. And then this is another one of my favorites. And this one, I don't tend to do abstract. Sorry, that was upside down. Like my brain's going, there's something. Oh. So I don't tend to do abstract art too often. But I had some leftover gold leafing, and I decided to just kind of go for it and see if I liked doing something that had no structure, that was all just emotion and you know, technique and whatnot. And then because one of my friends got me on a Muppet kick, more specifically a Gonzo kick. So I did Gonzo Sistine Chapel. I had some real fun with that. It's comedy. Again, I like tongue-in-cheek art humor. And then I did Gonzo's The Scream. Which somehow I thought there was less color in the original Scream, and no, there's actually a lot more different values in there than I thought. Gonzo with a pearl earring. So hard. Like, I didn't quite understand how difficult a 3/4 is. It's actually pretty easy for me to do head on, which apparently is hard for other people to do, which different folks. Anyways, but yeah, like doing something that's 3/4, because I'm so used to like, oh, okay, I've got two eyes and they're going to be roughly the same size, and it's like, oh no, 3/4, you like, there's a lot less of the eye that you can see, so I have to teach myself the structures. Sorry. Again, this is one that has a joke. It's a little bit of tongue-in-cheek humor, but I had a lot of fun with it. Actually, oh, I have to ship this one out today because that one has been bought. There's that one. This one was really fun to do. And these were, I put up a chart and went, okay, pick a face, pick a color, pick an activity, and if you want to, pick a fandom. And so from the chart, they would pick a face and all that other stuff. So really, really, really funny to go, okay, here's the face, here's the color, and here's, you know, the activity prompt. Yeah, I know, right? I love I love Easter eggs in games where they give you a real world reference, especially like when it comes to art. I find it hilarious because sometimes people really don't know the original art, because it doesn't always get taught or whatever. But yeah, sometimes people don't know the original art. So when they get to finally see the original art, they're like, "Oh my god, it was in my game and now it's also real life." And oh, it's a great way to like get people talking and get people thinking. This is still honestly my absolute like favorite trading card that I've done so far. This little Neko girl getting fed treats. I had so much fun making this, and it's hilarious. It's a convention joke. And of course, yes, these two. And so yeah, it's been interesting getting to figure out how to do human faces because I'm actually more used to doing animal faces or anthropomorphic art. Not because I'm like, hey, anthro. It, for whatever reason, I just fell into doing anthro art, and I love doing anthro art. And yeah, I'm just like, oh, I should probably practice human faces. So yeah, I've been having fun with it. I've really saturated a lot of the paper, so that's gonna take longer to dry than usual. And I want it to dry flat, so I have to be patient. And I think this is part of art that not necessarily everybody understands is when you're doing something like, say, watercolors or acrylics or oil paints. Ooh, man, I don't know if I will ever tackle oil paint, but sorry, camera going on a ride. Um, but yeah, when you're painting, when you're creating art, it's not like you can just sit down, just nail all of it at once. Digital art takes time. And at times you need to rest so that your brain doesn't just go whee and fry itself and you'll end up missing details or you might end up missing something that should register as yeah, this isn't quite right. So you have to take breaks. You have to take time to like really process a lot of what's going on. Excuse me as I move that. Uh, when it comes to physical formats, when it comes to things like acrylics, oils, uh, watercolors, even sculpting, like any sort of medium where you go from a pliable to a set, it needs time. Cure times, dry times, wait times add a lot. And sometimes you'll have to do multiple installments or multiple commissions at a time. It's not that you're being greedy or anything like that. It's that you're trying to get as much done and as much process, but some stuff you have to wait because if you don't, you get muddied results or you get subpar results. So when you ask an artist to do something for you and it takes more time than you think it should, it's often because of dry times, because of cure times, because a lot of artists are very detail orientated. So they do take their time because they want to make sure to get you a good product, a product that you're going to like, and something that you're going to treasure strictly for yourself or possibly for commercial use. But yeah, like be kind to your artists. They are definitely human and there's a lot going on in their craft. Hello, OP Carries. They are our newest follower, and Crookavelli TV is also followed just recently. Hello, and thank you to both of you. If you guys do feel like joining me over on Twitch, it is Dame Red Bento. And I usually tune in at about 10 a.m. West Coast time and do like watercolor painting. And of course, I chat. I chat a lot. I talk a lot. It's what I do. I'm trying to. Oh, uh, Babysitters Club improv stream, which will be done by Coffee House Productions. I'm the quiz master. Don't worry, you're not going to watch me do improv because I don't think my chops are there. But we have a fun crew that does that, and I do the quiz master, um, along with Gabby. And yeah, we have some great fun. And we're also planning on doing a once a month, kind of like a podcast, I guess you could call it, called Karen Gets Woke. And don't worry, there's going to be like whole informational, educational threads on what a Karen is. Because Karen is not a skin tone, Karen is an attitude. Karen is a way of treating people and going about things. But Karen, being a Karen or acting like a Karen, doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. It can actually really be a good thing. It's a matter of recognizing what you're doing, um, recognizing some of the aggressions that you might be putting forward, but also how to direct that passion in constructive ways, in ways that actually create a better society. Because that aggro can be used in good ways. You just need to actually have a way of doing it that works. So I've got to let that dry for a bit more. I know it's kind of a short cast today. I unfortunately have a lot of adulting to do. Um, I will probably be listing stuff for sale, both artwork and like magazines and books and stuff. I am planning on making kind of a big move in the next couple of months, which means not only do I need to streamline, I need to get funds together so that I can make that move safely and yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot, but it's going to be, I think, a very good thing. And also that money will be going towards getting me a new setup. Let me turn you around, hopefully. Yay! So there you go. You can see my setup. Got my ring light. My really cool little Logitech camera. You can see, my setup and everything. But this is my keyboard. And I love my gaming laptop, but I have pretty much obliterated several of the keys uh, because I press really hard on buttons, and there is no way to replace a keyboard. Because it's not just that, oh, those keys are missing. I've almost worn them out. And so, yeah, I'm going to be selling off a lot of stuff, a lot of artwork, commissions, all that kind of stuff, so that I can put funds together to get myself a good desktop, which I find are far more sustainable, because you can replace pieces, you can replace parts much easier on a desktop setup than you can with a laptop setup, unfortunately. So, yes, I'm going to head off, get some adulting done. I hope you all have a lovely and wonderful day. I will be back on tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. West Coast time. If you have questions, if you want to send a whisper, if you'd like to know something, if there's a topic you'd like me to speak on, whether it is LGBTQ, semi-political, worldview, anything like that, by all means, feel free to like send me a note and like, hey, what's going on with blah 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 blah, or hey, I just really need to rant or whatever. Feel free to like drop on by. I like talking, and I also know that sometimes you just need somebody who can listen and maybe give you an outside opinion. So, thank you all so much. You are awesome. Have a good one.